fail, you fail. You're done. Fail. Started something, failed, you're done. Go get a job. They hate you because you're white colonialists. They hated us in the Holocaust because we weren't white enough. We're like, yeah, we're going to turn out, we're going to put out our light. We'll be just like you. No. Get your light back on. Because without a light, we're lost. Put your light back. Am I the only person with my eyes open? How does everyone else not think?
Communities that have been affected by terrorism are innovating. Check out this. Now they're talking about putting in a new university and a new airport in Kiryat Shmona, which is a town in the north of Israel that has lost like 60% of its citizenry, of its residents. And now in order to rehabilitate this town, so the government is meeting all the time. I actually know the guy who used to be the mayor of Kiryat Arba. Now he's in charge of rehabilitating the north and especially Kiryat Shmona. So they're talking about doing all kinds of stuff in order to make this town flourish again. I bet that it's going to come back stronger. What do you say about the north of Israel?
100%. I don't have any doubts whatsoever. Listen, again, it's difficult what they're living through, no question. But the resilience of the Jewish people is unparalleled in the world, right? Again, you see this, by the way, not only in the military and the war and everything like that, but you see it in even in entrepreneurship, right? It's a very interesting thing that not many people speak about, but in most ecosystems in the world, if you fail, you failed. You're done. You failed. You started something, you failed, you're done. Go get a job. Like that's, I'm not saying there aren't people who don't have another startup, but generally speaking, failure is frowned upon in most places.
Right.
In Israel, it's like, oh, you failed 3 times? Wow, you must be a rock star. Like,
really?
We encourage this. Yeah, because that is the right way to look at this, because when you fail, you learn lessons. If you implement those lessons, then it's not a failure, right? So in Israel, everyone has like, I had this startup and this failed, that failed, and all of a sudden, and I know 100 people like that went through startups and failed and failed and failed, and then they finally ended up succeeding big time. So, it's a very, very Israeli level of resilience that we don't really see. I don't think we see anywhere else.
Here, we have a story of sea turtles, a sea turtle rescue center. I mean, you were saying before, like you think that right now would not be the time to deal with other things, and certainly not rescuing sea turtles. So there's a new complex that's opening up, the world's only breeding group with guided tours that will showcase researchers' efforts to stave off animals' extinction. And this guy who, Yaniv Levy, he had all kinds of issues. He bumped into this, he happened upon a large sea turtle called the loggerhead, whose limb was injured. And he named the loggerhead Mazal and rehabbed it. And then he set up a temporary turtle treatment center. And now, 30 million shekel later, this is now going to be opening up during the war, a national sea turtle rescue center. So that's certainly an example of what you were talking about.
Yeah, I think, it's very, very interesting because, I'm kind of like formerly the tech guy. Now I'm in, this Israel stuff. And to see people in the tech world who are some of the most brilliant entrepreneurs and investors in the world, objectively, like Paul Graham. Okay, Paul Graham started Y Combinator, which is the accelerator that gave birth to Airbnb, for example, right? Wow. I mean, Paul Graham I think it's a consensus that he's in the top 5 investors in the world. He's a flaming anti-Semite. He doesn't even hide it anymore. Like you read his tweets, you want to throw up. He doesn't even hide it, okay? So, and he's investing in Israel. He knows that Israeli entrepreneurs are kicking butt. And then in his next breath, he's like, yeah, but you're murdering and raping Palestinian women. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, you think we're the same people saving turtles? And like, we're the most moral nation in the history of the world. And you see that across the board. It doesn't matter what you want to look at. You want to look at cancer research. You want to look at first on scene as a natural disaster, whatever you want to look at. Israel leads the way, not only in tech, but in morality. And so, we're saving turtles and we're going into Gaza and raping Palestinian women. Come on. Enough already with the BS.
I covered J.P. Sears, who was a conservative comedian, and he's turned anti-Israel. It's become like a thing now. It's like in vogue. You know what, Hillel? Somebody said something to me which hurt me to the core, and that's pretty rare. They said, in America, Israel has become toxic. And I'm like, what? Yeah. Those words, Israel and toxic. Israel is a light. Israel is a gift to this world. Explain that to me, and explain to me how I, as a content creator and folks that are watching, how are we supposed to deal with this? Is this supposed to depress us sometimes? or is it supposed? What's the proper reaction to this global anti-Semitic scourge at the very moment where the revelation of the ingathering of the exiles and the rebuilding of the Jewish people in the land of Israel? Like, how does that comport? How do we deal with that internal conflict?
So I'll repeat what I said before, because it really is true. In the first half of this war, I found myself day in super frustrated, super angry, until I realized, hello, what are you doing? Clearly God's running the show, because this makes no sense, right? And so first and foremost, I'm not worried. That being said, if you want to analyze, the root of anti-Semitism, putting aside theology, putting aside Judaism, and we know that in Judaism, Esav and Yaakov, they'll always hate us. Putting that aside, if you do look for a rational explanation, first, let's rule out what it's not, okay? Because people say, oh, they hate you because you're successful. Well, they hated us when we weren't successful. Yeah, they hate you because you're white colonialists, but they hated us in the Holocaust when we weren't white enough. They hate you because of your state, but they hated us when we were stateless, right? So you can't say it's because of this, or it's not, okay? That's number one. That's important to get out of the way. But if I had to try to rationalize it, this is a question that I had my entire life. Why do they hate us? We're amazing. We've made these people's lives significantly better. Why do they hate us? I think a very strange phenomenon, which I'm sure you've asked yourself, maybe you have an answer to this, is why is there a direct correlation between assimilation and anti-Semitism? You would think the more we are like them, the more they like us. The more we assimilate, the less they hate us. That's just psychology, right? But the answer is it's exactly the opposite. The more we assimilate, the more anti-Semitism. I mean, assimilation in Germany was through the roof, right? How does that make any sense? So the same person told me the other side of the coin, which is as follows, and I really enjoyed this analogy. He said, the nations of the world are ships. They're navigating the sea, and we're the lighthouse. Without the lighthouse, they don't know where the hell they're going. And we're like, yeah, we're going to put out our light. We'll be just like you. And they're like, no. Get your light back on. Because without a light, we're lost. Put your light back on. And we're like, no, we're just like you. And they're like, you're not just like us. We developed a tool to show you that you're not like us. And that's called anti-Semitism. And that's when anti-Semitism goes through the roof. And the next stage, which hasn't happened yet, and unfortunately it's, again, in history keeps repeating itself over and over, so it's going to happen now, is that empire falls. As soon as the morality's out the window and it comes after the Jews, that empire falls. And the last thing I want to see is the West falling, but I mean, again, it's not that far-fetched to imagine radical Islam taking over, as it is already taking over, and the West falling. And that's the next stage, unfortunately. But that's how I understand anti-Semitism.
That's a very interesting analysis, and kudos to your friend. There are two elements today that are enslavers. If it's the CCP and radical secularism, communism that wants to control the world through technology, or jihadism, which wants to kind of enslave the world and put a hijab on all of us, metaphorically. These are two forces that are very powerful. And when you talk about the West, I think what we're talking about is the forces of liberty, want to give mankind liberty. But I see that the America side of things is holding on, but it's not like all, united in a war for liberty for the globe. They think, they want to shrink America. America first is just another way of saying, I don't want to get involved in things and let the world go to hell in a handbasket.
100%. It's crazy to watch. You see these things and we're like, is this really happening? This doesn't make any sense. How are these people, on the streets of the United States of America openly supporting bin Laden? Like, they have to take a double. Like, did that really happen? Did I see that? Did I imagine? Was that a dream? Like, this stuff on a daily basis, it's completely bonkers. And everything that's happening, it seems to me that we're headed on a trajectory for, unfortunately, for the West. And when I say the West, by the way, to be clear, Canada's already fallen. The UK's already fallen. Paris has fallen. When I say the West, I'm talking about the United States of America. And unfortunately, as we know, if I had told you, this is the crazy part, right? If I had told you just 5 years ago, in 5 years from now, Jews will not be allowed to walk around campuses freely. Shuls, synagogues will be vandalized. Jewish businesses will be boycotted. Jews will be harassed and assaulted and murdered on the streets, lit on fire on the streets of the United States of America.
Ambulances
You would
burned.
have said to me, right, exactly. You would have said to me, dude, whatever it is you're smoking, stop smoking it. That's what you would have. And here we are. And yet, we didn't get into this. I don't know if you want to get into this, but and yet, I speak to my friends in Teaneck and in Woodmere and in everywhere, and they're like, yeah, it's okay. It's not going to happen here. What do you mean it's not? It's happening here. What do you mean it's not going to happen here? What? Here's the crazy part it's like sometimes I feel like, what? Am I the only person with my eyes open? How does everyone else not see this? I challenge you to name one thing that happened before the Holocaust, that led up to the Holocaust, that hasn't happened today? Let me just qualify that question. I'm not talking about once it was institutionalized. Once there were laws and institutionalized against Jews, that's already a Holocaust. What led up to that? If you look at everything that led up to that, not a single thing that led up to it has not happened today. They've all happened, every single one of them. How did they not see what was happening? And they never had an answer until now, because the writing isn't on the wall. It's all over the wall. The wall's covered. And these people are like, yeah, it's not going to happen here. It's insanity, pure insanity.
Well, there were a lot of German Jews that did leave, and there are American Jews that are coming. And there was another story that showed. Here's the story: is that the demand for Jerusalem homes of luxury, ultra luxury, is flying. And I know my Syrian friends Syrian Jewish friends are trying to buy apartments in Jerusalem and develop them. So there is an awakening, but you're certainly right that it's surprising that there's not a bigger one. What I say to people all the time is, I just say to them, buy an apartment in Israel. Get that place. It doesn't have to be in Jerusalem in the luxury place. Get it somewhere else. Get yourself a place. Get yourself a safe harbor economically as well. It's good for your money. It's good for your body. It's good for your kids. It's good for you. Just get that place. Today, I have like lowered the bar. I'm like, you don't have to make aliyah, but have a place already in the land. Like, be smart. Be a little bit smart. Yeah. Obviously, things are... obviously there's a Mamdani. Obviously the campuses are against Israel. Obviously the New York Times is against Israel. Like, wake up and smell the coffee.
So Michael Eisenberg, I'm sure you know Michael,
sure.
One of the top investors in Israel, always tells me the story that when he was a kid in Riverdale, my dad said to him, you could own a piece of the rock. You can actually buy it. And he said, that was such a core component, such a big push for me when I made aliyah, is that thing that your father said to me, you could own a piece of the rock when I was a kid. And the truth is, I say to people, okay, you can't come right now. I get it. You have elderly parents, but like, don't kid yourself. I mean, as our friend Rabbi Ephraim Goldberg famously said, and I love this analogy, he said, American Jews are on a business trip. When you're on a business trip, you get a nice car, you get a nice hotel, but you're on a business trip. You're going home. Like, don't kid yourself. And so, yeah, in Boca Raton and other places, they're still living like the business trip. But he realizes, and by the way, I don't know if you know, he's very strong about aliyah. He pushes pretty hard. But
they
in general,
Rabbi Ephraim Goldberg celebrates every time somebody makes aliyah. They make a celebration every summer. Absolutely.
Right. But on the other hand, it's I don't know if you ever asked yourself this question, but what did the Meraglim tell themselves? Like, these are the 10 of the biggest rabbis.
The spies in the Bible.
Right. The 10 spies, or 12, 10 of them came back and said bad things about Israel. They were the leading rabbis. They were heads of the tribes. What did they tell themselves? And the answer is so obvious. They said to themselves, here I am in the desert. We got clouds of glory. We got food coming from the heavens. We got water coming from stones. We're very religious here. We have a direct line of communication with God. We are very religious here. Go into Israel? Build an economy and an army? I'm going to stay here where my kids are sheltered, so my kids don't go off the derech, my kids don't become secular, God forbid, and that's obviously said with sarcasm. So they said, we'll stay here religious in the desert. And God's like, you don't get it. It's not your job to stay in Lakewood. It's your job to get on a plane, come home,